So there's a vote coming up in the next couple of days in the Senate that's really, really important. It's a vote dealing with nominations. Now you see, the Senate really does two things. We do personnel and we do policy. The policy would be legislation. The personnel is nominations. Every president, when they come into office, they'll have about 1,200 people that they nominate for all kinds of different jobs around the federal government. All those are vetted by the White House and they're presented to the Senate. The Senate then does background checks on them. They do lots of questions. They do staff interviews with them. Then they'll come and do a hearing in the committee. Then they'll do what's called questions for the record after that. And then after all of that is complete, there's a vote in the committee, and then they're sent to the floor for a vote. In the past, those people, once they had passed committee, once they had been approved, once all the background checks were done, were typically passed in big blocks, like 30, 40 people at a time, because they weren't all that controversial, because they were the deputy assistant secretary of some agency. The president was given deference to be able to pick his staff. In the past as well it is now, the minority party or any senator, quite frankly, could say, hey, this is a nominee I need a little more time on. So they could request, any senator could request, it was typically done by the minority party, to say, I know this person's gonna pass, but I wanna get a little more time to debate them. So they would make a request, and then there would be a full day of what they call the intervening day. And then after that day, there would be 30 hours of additional debate. That's a lot of time. So it's really 2.5 days that would be blocked off for that person, a full day and then 30 hours of debate time. That was done about 24, 25 times in the last 6 presidents. So it's rare, but it occasionally happened. For the first 2 years of President Trump's time, it's happened 128 times. 128 times there's been a request for it at a full day plus an additional 30 hours of debate. For most of those times, there was no real debate. In fact, for many of those nominees, the debate on the floor wasn't 30 hours, it was in minutes. Really, the floor just sat empty and there was no debate on the floor. We had some very controversial nominees that the debate was 2 or 3 hours at the most. You see, 30 hours of debate's a lot after they've already gone through all the committee, after they've already had all the background checks, they've already done all the questions for the record. It's pretty rare to have debate. In fact, we've had several nominees that had less than 5 minutes of time of the additional 30 hours that had been requested, but they still got a full day. What it's done is it started a new process in the Senate, where the Senate can't get to legislation. We just do nominations, and the Senate's not operating. 2 years ago, I saw this trend, and I made a proposal 2 years ago to say we've got to fix this process in the Senate, because if this is happening now, it's setting a new precedent, quite frankly. And next time that there's a Democrat president that'll come forward, Republicans are gonna do twice as many of these requests for extra time for every one of those folks. And it'll suddenly be the new normal in the Senate that we have these long protracted times. During that 30 hours and that time period that's set aside for additional debate, you can't bring up the legislation under Senate rules. You can only just leave the floor empty or have debate on that person. We gotta fix this. So 2 years ago, I started meeting with colleagues, both Democrats and Republicans, and said we need to fix this because we're setting a bad precedent. So we created a whole new process. Democrats have been on board with it and have said, yeah, we'd be glad to be able to do that because we think it's a very fair rule of the way we're talking about limiting debate, that if you have a person that you want additional time, you could still get that full day of extra time plus an additional 2 hours of debate. Wouldn't be 30 hours of debate, but you'd have your full day still plus an additional 2 hours. I kept it that way except for Supreme Court, Circuit Court, cabinet level, secretaries of, left that at 30 hours. But for everyone else, pulled it down to 2 hours, still leaving that intervening day in it. So it's really a full day plus 2 hours. A lot of folks have said that seems very fair. It's not partisan, not trying to be partisan, just trying to fix the Senate. So no matter who's the president, or no matter who's the party in charge in the Senate, it's a good working process. That proposal is coming in front of the Senate next week. My hope is Republicans and Democrats alike will come together and to say, for the sake of the future of the Senate, we've got to be able to fix the way we do nominations now. Because if we don't fix it now, it'll just stay this way year after year after year, and Americans get more and more frustrated. The Senate's not getting legislation done. The last thing we need is one more thing to be able to slow down our government. We should be able to keep our government where we can debate the issues, engage in it, and solve problems. This is solving one of those problems, and I look forward to the debate that's coming in the days ahead.